The millionaire uncle pushed open the front door and froze in absolute shock when he witnessed the horrifying scene before him. His 8-year-old niece was on her hands and knees, desperately trying to force clean water between her dying grandmother's lips, while her stepmother stood over them both. A bottle of pills clutched in her trembling hand, and pure hatred blazing in her eyes. But what Marcus Chen saw in that split second would shatter everything he thought he knew about his family, and expose a web of lies so twisted that it had been slowly killing the people he loved most. Just 3 hours earlier, Marcus had been sitting in his Silicon Valley office, reviewing quarterly reports for his tech company, when something had been nagging at him all week. He hadn't spoken to his mother Rose or his little niece Lily since his brother David's funeral 3 months ago. Every time he called, Victoria would answer with the same rehearsed excuses. "Oh, Marcus, they're both sleeping. Rose has been so tired lately, and Lily's adjusting to her new school schedule. I'll tell them you called." But today, something felt different. Maybe it was the way Victoria's voice had cracked slightly when she'd said sleeping. Or maybe it was the gut instinct that had made him successful in business. The same instinct that told him when someone was lying in a board meeting. So instead of calling, Marcus had decided to drive the hour from Palo Alto to San Francisco for a surprise visit. Now, as he stood frozen in the marble foyer of his childhood home, Marcus realized his instincts had been right. Terrifyingly right. "Uncle Marcus." Lily's voice broke through his shock. The little girl looked up at him with eyes that held far too much knowledge for someone who should still believe in fairy tales. Her dark hair was tangled, her pajamas were stained with what looked like spilled medicine, and her small hands were shaking as she held a glass of water. "Lily, what's happening here?" Marcus stepped forward, his business-strained mind already cataloging details. His mother looked gaunt, her cheeks sunken, her breathing shallow and labored. This wasn't the vibrant woman who had insisted on hosting Thanksgiving just 4 months ago. Even while grieving her youngest son, Victoria spun around, and Marcus caught the flash of panic in her eyes before she forced a smile. "Marcus, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you." Obviously, his voice was colder than he'd intended, but something about the scene felt like walking into a crime in progress. "Mum looks terrible. How long has she been like this?" "It's been gradual," Victoria said, moving to block his view of the bed where his mother lay propped against pillows. "The grief from David's death, you know how it affects elderly people. The doctor says it's natural for her age." But Lily shook her head violently, her small voice cutting through Victoria's explanation like a knife. "No, Uncle Marcus. She was fine until Victoria started giving her the special vitamins. Every time she takes them, Grandma gets sicker and sicker. And tonight, I saw her put white powder in Grandma's tea." The words hung in the air like a lit fuse. Victoria's carefully composed mask slipped for just a second, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Lily has such an imagination. She's been having trouble adjusting since her father's death. Sometimes children create stories when they're processing trauma." But Marcus was already moving toward his mother's bedside, his mind racing. Rose Chen had raised 2 boys as a single mother after her husband died, had built a small fortune through careful investments, had been sharp as a tack even into her 70s. The woman lying in this bed looked like she'd aged 20 years in 3 months. "Mum," he took her frail hand in his. Her skin was paper-thin and cold. "Mum, can you hear me?" Rose's eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then gradually sharpening as they found his face. "Marcus, is it really you?" "I'm here, Mum, how are you feeling?" "Confused," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Everything's been so foggy. Like I'm swimming through thick water all the time. But right now, talking to you, it's clearer than it's been in weeks." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. He'd seen this before, not personally, but in the corporate world. A brilliant CEO who'd started making erratic decisions, whose mental acuity had seemed to decline rapidly, only to discover later that someone had been slipping him drugs to force him out of his position. "What medications are you taking, Mum?" I'm not sure. Victoria handles all that now. She's been so helpful since David... Rose's voice trailed off, confusion clouding her features again. She takes her vitamins every morning and evening, Victoria interjected, her voice tight with barely controlled tension. Plus her regular prescriptions for blood pressure and arthritis. Really, Marcus, I don't appreciate you barging in here and questioning my care. I've been managing everything perfectly well. Have you? Marcus stood, his full height imposing in the bedroom that suddenly felt too small. At 6'2", he'd inherited his father's build, along with his mother's sharp business mind. Because, from where I'm standing, it looks like my mother is dying. She's 72 years old and grieving. She's 72 years old and being poisoned. The words came out before Marcus could stop them, but, as soon as he said them, he knew they were true. Every instinct that had made him millions in the tech industry was screaming danger. Victoria's face went white, then flushed red with anger. How dare you accuse me of— I'm not accusing you of anything yet, Marcus cut her off, pulling out his phone. I'm calling 911 and asking them to bring a toxicology team. If Mum is just grieving an age-related decline, the tests will show that. If she's being poisoned, they'll show that too. Uncle Marcus, yes. Lily jumped up from beside the bed, her small face fierce with determination. I've been trying to protect Grandma, but I didn't know how to prove what Victoria was doing. Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. You have no right to come into my house and make wild accusations. I am the legal guardian, now. I make the medical decisions. Your house. Marcus raised an eyebrow. This house belongs to my mother, and last I checked, she's still alive. Barely, but alive. He was already dialing when Victoria made her mistake. Instead of continuing to protest her innocence, instead of demanding he leave, she lunged for his phone. Don't make that call, Marcus. You don't understand the situation. The threat in her voice was unmistakable now, all pretense dropped. Marcus easily held the phone out of her reach. Victoria was barely 5'4", but her reaction told him everything he needed to know. Oh, I understand perfectly. He pressed the call button. 911. I need to report a suspected poisoning case and request immediate medical assistance. Victoria staggered backward, her hand flying to her throat. Lily ran to Marcus and grabbed his free arm, looking up at him with desperate hope. Sir, what is your location and the nature of the emergency? The dispatcher's calm voice filled the room. 1247 Pacific Heights Drive, San Francisco. I need an ambulance and police. I believe my 72-year-old mother is being systematically poisoned by her caregiver. The victim is conscious but showing signs of chronic toxicity, confusion, weakness, rapid physical decline over the past 3 months. Units are being dispatched now, sir. Please stay on the line. Victoria was backing toward the door now, her eyes darting between Marcus and Lily like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. But instead of running, she stopped and straightened her shoulders, her face hardening into a mask of cold calculation. You're making a terrible mistake, Marcus. When the police get here, I'm going to tell them how you've been neglecting your family, how you abandoned your mother and niece after David's death, how you're only showing up now because you're worried about your inheritance. Marcus almost smiled. Is that really the angle you want to go with? Because I have 3 months of phone records showing every time I tried to call and every time you made excuses for why I couldn't speak to them. I have emails to my assistant asking her to send flowers and gifts that you refused to accept. I have a paper trail showing every attempt I made to stay connected with my family. Victoria's confidence flickered. But you know what I don't have? Marcus continued, his voice getting harder. Any medical records showing what medications you've been giving my mother, any documentation of doctor visits, any legitimate prescriptions for these mystery vitamins that are making her sicker. The bottles are in the kitchen, Lily whispered. Victoria keeps them in a locked drawer, but I saw where she hides the key. Marcus looked down at his niece, this small, brave girl who had been trying to protect her grandmother all alone. You've been watching out for Grandma Rose this whole time. Lily nodded. I tried to give her clean water instead of the tea Victoria made. I hid her real medicine and gave it to her when Victoria wasn't looking. But I'm just a kid, I didn't know how to stop it completely. The sound of sirens growing closer filled the room. Victoria's face had gone ashen, but her voice was still venomous. Even if you're right, and I'm not saying Yuru can't prove anything, you've been absent for 3 months. What kind of judge is going to give custody to someone who abandons his family? The kind who sees the phone records, the emails, and the witness testimony from an 8-year-old who's been fighting to save her grandmother's life while the adults in her world failed her. Marcus replied, "But you're right about one thing, I did abandon my family. I trusted you to take care of them, and I should have known better." The sirens were directly outside now. Red and blue lights flashed through the bedroom, windows painting the walls in alternating colors of emergency. "But I'm here now," Marcus said, kneeling down to Lily's level, "and I'm never leaving you two alone again." As paramedics and police officers filled the house, as Victoria was read her rights and led away in handcuffs, as his mother was carefully loaded onto a gurney for transport to the hospital, Marcus held Lily close and made a promise. Whatever happens next, we're family. And family protects each other. But as he watched the ambulance pull away with his mother inside, Marcus knew the real fight was just beginning. The toxicology reports would take days. The legal battle over guardianship could take months. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice was whispering that Victoria's calm confidence, even as she was arrested, suggested she had backup plans he hadn't considered yet. The house felt different now, not like the warm family home where he'd grown up, but like a crime scene where innocence had died slowly, one poisoned cup of tea at a time. What he didn't know yet was that Victoria's mother had been sitting in a rental car 3 blocks away, watching the police cars arrive, already making phone calls to lawyers and private investigators. The Hayes family had been planning this inheritance grab for months, and they weren't going to let one inconvenient brother destroy years of careful preparation. The real battle for Lily's future and Rose's life was about to begin. 2 days after the arrests, Marcus sat in the sterile waiting room of San Francisco General Hospital, watching Lily color in a Disney princess book while they waited for the latest toxicology results. The little girl had barely left his side since that horrific night, as if she was afraid he might disappear too if she looked away for too long. "Uncle Marcus." Lily's small voice broke the silence. "Is Grandma going to be okay?" Marcus closed his laptop where he'd been reading legal documents and moved to sit beside her on the uncomfortable plastic chair. "The doctors say she's getting stronger every day. Her body is cleaning out all the bad stuff Victoria was giving her." But what Marcus didn't tell Lily was what Dr. Sarah Martinez had told him privately that morning. "Mr. Chen, your mother was being systematically poisoned with a combination of sedatives and blood thinners. Another 2 weeks, maybe 3, and we would have been talking about permanent organ damage. Your niece may have saved her grandmother's life by diluting those medications with clean water." The hospital had become their temporary home. Rose was in the ICU, slowly recovering as the toxins worked their way out of her system, while Marcus navigated the legal nightmare that Victoria had left behind. The Hayes family had hired one of San Francisco's most expensive law firms, and they were fighting the charges with everything they had. "Mr. Chen," a familiar voice made Marcus look up. Detective Lisa Park, the lead investigator on the case, stood in the doorway with a thick folder under her arm. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and the kind of steady presence that made victims feel safe. "Detective Park, please, sit down. Any news?" Lisa glanced at Lily, who was pretending to color while obviously listening to every word. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately? Whatever you have to say, Lily can hear it. She's been through enough secrets and lies. We're being honest with each other from now on." Lisa nodded approvingly and sat down across from them. The toxicology report came back. "Your mother had dangerous levels of lorazepam, warfarin, and several other prescription medications in her system, none of which were prescribed by her actual doctor. So Victoria was definitely poisoning her." Marcus felt Lily tense beside him. "Without question, but here's where it gets complicated. Lisa opened her folder and pulled out several photographs. We searched Victoria's belongings and found a pharmacy's worth of medications, all with forged prescriptions. But we also found something else. She slid a photograph across to Marcus. It showed a handwritten document that looked like a will. Victoria had a forged version of your mother's will, dated just 2 weeks ago. In this version, everything goes to Victoria as Lily's guardian, with a provision that if anything happens to Lily before she turns 18, the entire estate goes to Victoria permanently. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. She was planning to. We believe so, yes. The timeline suggests she intended to complete the poisoning of your mother, then arrange an accident for Lily within a year or two. Lily had stopped coloring entirely now, her small face pale but determined. She told her mum on the phone that I would be in boarding school, but she meant forever, didn't she? Lisa reached over and squeezed Lily's hand. You're safe now, sweetheart. And you were very brave to protect your grandmother the way you did. But the Hayes family isn't giving up, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. No, they're not. Victoria's mother, Patricia Hayes, has filed for custody of Lily, claiming that you're an unfit guardian due to your history of abandoning the family. They're arguing that Victoria was trying to help your mother and that you've manipulated Lily into making false accusations. Marcus started to speak, but Lisa held up her hand. Before you panic, know that we have evidence they don't know about. When we searched Victoria's phone, we found months of text messages between her and her mother, planning this entire scheme. Patricia Hayes was the one who researched the drugs, found the corrupt pharmacist who provided the forged prescriptions, and helped Victoria establish the timeline for the poisoning. She pulled out another document. We also found this in Patricia's hotel room when we arrested her yesterday. The paper was a detailed plan, written in Patricia's handwriting, outlining exactly how to slowly poison Rose Chen while making it look like natural decline due to grief and age. It included backup plans for dealing with interference from Marcus and contingency arrangements for Lily's eventual removal from the picture. They've been planning this since before your brother's funeral, Lisa explained. Victoria targeted David specifically because he was recently divorced and vulnerable. She seduced him, married him quickly, and positioned herself as the perfect stepmother and daughter-in-law. Marcus felt sick. So David's death. We're investigating that too. The timing of his heart attack, combined with what we now know about Victoria's access to cardiac medications, has raised some red flags. We may be looking at 3 attempted murders, not just one. Lily had been quiet during this exchange, but now she looked up at Marcus with eyes that held too much wisdom for her age. Daddy was taking new vitamins too, just before he died. Victoria said they were for stress from the divorce. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa leaned forward. Lily, this is very important. Do you remember what those vitamins looked like? Small and white, but not like regular vitamins. More like the pills Victoria gave Grandma, but smaller. Lisa made a note in her file. We'll need to have your father's body exhumed for additional testing. I know that's difficult to hear, but if Victoria murdered him too, do it, Marcus said immediately. David deserves justice, and we need to know the full scope of what these people did to our family. Over the next several hours, Lisa walked them through the legal process ahead. Victoria and Patricia Hayes were both in custody, but their lawyer was already working on bail applications. The Hayes family owned several properties and had significant financial resources, which meant they could afford to fight these charges for years. The good news, Lisa explained, is that attempted murder and elder abuse are serious felonies in California. Even if they make bail, they'll be monitored closely. And with the evidence we have, including Lily's eyewitness testimony and the physical proof of the poisoning, conviction is almost certain. What about custody? Marcus asked. Can they still try to take Lily? They can try, but their chances are essentially zero now. No judge is going to award custody to the family members of someone who tried to murder the child's grandmother, especially when that child was the one who prevented the murder. As if summoned by their conversation, a new voice interrupted them. Mr. Chen, I'm Janet Williams from Child Protective Services. Marcus tensed, but Lisa gestured for him to remain calm. Ms. Williams is one of the good ones, she said quietly. Janet was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She sat down and opened her own folder, smiling warmly at Lily. Hello, Lily. I've heard you're quite the hero. Lily shrugged, suddenly shy. I just tried to take care of Grandma. Well, you did an amazing job. Your grandmother is very lucky to have you. Janet turned to Marcus. Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your background check, your financial records, and your family history. I've also spoken with your mother's doctors and several character references you provided. CPS is prepared to recommend that you receive full custody of Lily, with visitation rights for your mother once she's released from the hospital. Marcus felt a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying lift from his shoulders. Thank you. What do we need to do to make it official? There will be a hearing next week. The Hayes family's attorney will likely challenge our recommendation, but given the circumstances, Janet glanced meaningfully at the evidence folders Lisa had spread across the table. I don't anticipate any serious objections from the court. As the adults continued discussing legal procedures, Lily tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Uncle Marcus, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Are you going to send me to boarding school like Victoria wanted to? Marcus's heart broke a little at the fear in her voice. He knelt down so they were eye level, taking her small hands in his. Lily, I need you to understand something very important. You are not a burden. You are not in the way. You are my family, and family stays together. I don't care if I have to hire a dozen nannies or completely reorganize my company. You're staying with me for as long as you want to. Tears filled Lily's eyes, but for the first time since he'd known her, they seemed to be happy tears. What if I want to stay forever? Then forever it is. Detective Park cleared her throat gently. I hate to interrupt this moment, but there's one more thing you both need to know. When we searched Patricia Hayes' hotel room, we found evidence that this wasn't their first attempt at this kind of scheme. She pulled out a newspaper clipping from 5 years ago. The headline read, "Elderly widow dies suddenly, leaves fortune to caregiver." Patricia Hayes worked as a private caregiver for Mrs. Dorothy Manning, an 80-year-old widow in Portland. Mrs. Manning died unexpectedly, leaving her entire estate to Patricia. The family contested the will, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove wrongdoing. Marcus felt sick again. How many people have they killed? We're working with authorities in Oregon and Washington to investigate at least 3 other suspicious deaths over the past decade. All elderly people with significant assets, all with caregivers connected to the Hayes family. Lily had gone very quiet, processing this information in the way that children do, accepting the reality that the adults in her world could be monsters. But finding strength in the knowledge that there were also adults who would protect her. They're never getting out of prison, are they? She asked. Not if I have anything to say about it, Lisa replied firmly. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Marcus realized that while the immediate crisis was over, they were all forever changed by what had happened. Lily had learned lessons about trust and evil that no 80-year-old should have to learn. Rose would recover physically, but the psychological trauma of knowing her own daughter, Law had tried to murder her, would take much longer to heal. And Marcus himself had learned that success in business meant nothing if you weren't there for the people who mattered most. But as he watched Lily carefully pack her coloring books and the small stuffed animal the nurses had given her, Marcus also saw something else. Resilience. This little girl had faced down a killer, protected her grandmother, and survived trauma that would have destroyed many adults. She was going to be okay. They all were. The Hayes family had underestimated the power of a child's love and an uncle's determination. Now they would spend the rest of their lives paying for that mistake. But the story wasn't over yet. As they walked out of the hospital together, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This isn't finished, Marcus. You have no idea what you've started. Watch your back. Marcus deleted the message without showing it to Lily, but his hand instinctively tightened on hers. The Hayes family might be in jail, but they clearly had allies on the outside. The real fight for their family's safety was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the marble foyer of his mother's house, their house, now watching Lily practice piano in the living room. The melody of Fr. Elise drifted through the air, occasionally punctuated by a wrong note and a small sigh of frustration. Rose sat in her favorite armchair nearby, still weak but growing stronger every day, offering gentle encouragement. "Try that passage again, sweetheart, but slower this time." The scene should have been peaceful, domestic, normal. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Ever since that threatening text message at the hospital, he'd hired a private security team to monitor the house. The guards were discreet, but they were there, one in a car across the street, another walking the neighborhood disguised as a jogger, a third monitoring the security cameras he'd had installed throughout the property. His phone buzzed. "Detective Park." "Marcus, we have a problem." Marcus stepped into the kitchen, out of earshot of Lily and his mother. "What kind of problem?" "Victoria and Patricia Hayes made bail this morning." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "How is that possible?" "You said they were dangerous." Their lawyer convinced the judge that they weren't flight risks because all their assets are tied up in California real estate. "They're on house arrest with ankle monitors," but Lisa's voice trailed off. "But what?" "But 30 minutes after they were released, both ankle monitors went offline. We're treating this as an immediate threat to you and your family." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. Through the kitchen window, he could see his security guard across the street, talking into a radio. Something was happening. "Lisa, I think." The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the house in an eerie red glow. From the living room came the sound of piano music stopping abruptly, followed by Rose's worried voice. "Marcus, what's happening? Stay where you are." Marcus called back, already moving toward the living room. "Both of you, get away from the windows." His security guard was running across the street now, weapon drawn. Behind him, a black SUV was speeding down the residential street, directly toward the house. Marcus reached the living room just as the SUV jumped the curb and crashed through the wrought iron fence surrounding the property. Lily screamed and dove behind the couch. Rose struggled to get out of her chair, still weak from weeks of poisoning. "Get down," Marcus shouted, grabbing Rose and helping her to the floor behind the piano just as the front windows exploded inward. But instead of gunfire, what came through the shattered glass was something far worse. Smoke canisters, filling the room with thick, choking gray clouds. Marcus pulled his shirt over his mouth and nose, reaching blindly for Lily in the chaos. His hand found her small arm, and he pulled her close. "Uncle Marcus, I can't breathe. Hold on to me and don't let go." Through the smoke, Marcus could hear multiple sets of footsteps entering the house. Heavy boots, moving with military precision. These weren't random criminals, they were professionals. A voice cut through the chaos, electronically distorted, but unmistakably female. "Marcus Chen. You have something that belongs to us. Give us the girl and the old woman, and you can live." "Victoria." Even with the voice modifier, Marcus recognized the cold hatred underneath. "Go to hell," Marcus shouted back, pulling Lily toward the back of the house. They needed to reach the panic room he'd had installed in the basement, a secure space with its own air filtration system and direct line to police. But as they stumbled through the smoke-filled hallway, more figures appeared from the kitchen. Men in black tactical gear with night vision goggles, moving through the smoke like it wasn't there. Marcus found himself face to face with a man, pointing what looked like a tranquilizer gun at Lily. "Step away from the child, Mr. Chen." Time slowed. Marcus saw the man's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Lily's terrified face looking up at him, heard Rose calling their names from somewhere in the smoke behind them. Without thinking, Marcus threw himself between Lily and the weapon. The dart meant for her caught him in the shoulder instead, and he felt the immediate burn of whatever sedative they were using. "Run," he whispered to Lily, already feeling his legs growing weak. "Panic room. Code is your birthday." But Lily didn't run. Instead, she did something that surprised everyone in the room. She started screaming at the top of her lungs, not screaming in fear, but screaming words: help, kidnapping. 1247 Pacific Heights Drive. They're trying to take us. The men in tactical gear exchanged glances, clearly not having planned for an 8-year-old with the presence of mind to shout their exact address to whoever might be listening, and people were listening. Marcus could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer. His security team must have called for backup the moment the power went out. Victoria's electronically disguised voice came through a radio one of the men was carrying. Abort. Too much attention. Fall back to Plan B. The man with the tranquilizer gun started to lower his weapon, but Victoria's voice crackled again. Wait. Take the old woman. She's the primary witness. Leave the others. No. Lily broke free from Marcus's weakening grip and ran toward the living room where Rose was still hidden behind the piano. You can't have my grandma. Marcus tried to follow, but the sedative was working fast. His vision was blurring, his coordination failing. He stumbled and fell to his knees in the hallway. Through the haze, he saw one of the tactical team members grab Rose, who was too weak to resist effectively. She looked so frail in the man's arms, like a bird with broken wings. Lily, Rose called out. Remember what I taught you about the safe? The safe. Marcus's thoughts were getting foggy, but he remembered Rose showing him an old wall safe behind a painting in her bedroom weeks ago. She'd said it contained important papers, but Marcus had been too focused on her recovery to pay much attention. Whatever was in that safe, Rose thought it was important enough to mention even while being kidnapped. The tactical team was retreating now, carrying Rose with them. Through the smoke and his sedative-induced haze, Marcus could see flashing lights outside. The police were arriving, but they were going to be too late. Lily appeared beside him, her small hands trying to pull him to his feet. Uncle Marcus, you have to get up. We have to save Grandma. Ken single quotes, T. ... Then tell me what to do. I'm not letting them take her like they took Daddy. Even through the fog of whatever they'd dosed him with, Marcus felt a surge of pride. This 8-year-old girl had more courage than most adults he knew. Call Detective Park, he managed to say. Speed dial 3. Tell her, Victoria has Rose. Tell her about the safe in Rose's room. Lily was already grabbing his phone from his pocket. Her small fingers flew over the screen with the ease of a generation raised on technology. Detective Park. This is Lily. The bad people came back and they took Grandma Rose. Yes, they're gone now. Uncle Marcus is hurt. He says to tell you about the safe in Grandma's room. Marcus could hear Lisa's voice on the other end of the phone, rapid-fire questions and instructions. Then Lily was helping him sit up against the wall, and paramedics were rushing into the house, and everything became a blur of activity. But through it all, one thing remained crystal clear in Marcus's mind. They had Rose, and they were going to kill her unless he found whatever she'd hidden in that safe. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in the back of an ambulance, fighting off the last effects of the sedative, while Detective Park questioned him. The house looked like a war zone. Shattered windows, smoke stains on the walls, furniture overturned. Crime scene technicians were photographing everything, looking for evidence that might help them track down Victoria and her team. The ankle monitors were found cut off in a parking garage downtown, Lisa explained. Professional job. They knew exactly how to disable the GPS tracking without triggering the tamper alerts until it was too late. How did they organize all this so quickly? Marcus asked. Professional tactical team, electronic surveillance, smoke grenades. This wasn't something they put together overnight. We think the Hayes family has been working with a larger criminal organization. The kind of people who specialize in inheritance fraud, elderly abuse, and making inconvenient family members disappear. Lily appeared at Marcus's side, having refused to be separated from him, while the paramedics checked him over. She was holding something in her hands, a small leather-bound journal. I found this in Grandma's safe, she said quietly. I think you should read it. Marcus took the journal with shaking hands. The first page was in Rose's careful handwriting, dated 6 months ago. If something happens to me, Marcus needs to know the truth about what David discovered before he died. Victoria didn't just marry him for his money, She married him because he was getting close to exposing her family's business. They've been systematically targeting wealthy elderly people for over a decade, using romance scams and caregiving services to get close to their victims. Marcus felt sick. David knew what Victoria was. Keep reading, Lily urged. David hired a private investigator to look into Victoria's background after they got engaged. What the investigator found was terrifying. Victoria Hayes wasn't even her real name. Her birth name was Victoria Santos, and she'd been arrested twice in other states for elder abuse, though the charges were dropped both times due to lack of evidence. David confronted her with this information 2 days before he died. He recorded their conversation. Marcus looked up at Lisa, who was reading over his shoulder. There's a recording. Lisa was already on her radio, calling for additional units to search for any hidden recording devices in David's old belongings. But Lily was pointing to the next page of the journal. David hid the recording device in his watch, the Rolex I gave him for his 40th birthday. He wore it everywhere, said it made him feel connected to family. If Victoria killed him, the proof is in that watch. Where is David's watch now? Lisa asked. Marcus and Lily exchanged glances. They both knew the answer, and it made the current situation even more urgent. Victoria has it, Marcus said quietly. She wore it to David's funeral, said she wanted to keep something of his close to her heart. We thought it was romantic grief, but she was really making sure the evidence never surfaced. Lisa was already coordinating search teams, calling in federal agents, putting out alerts for the black SUV and its occupants. But Marcus knew they were running out of time. They're going to kill my mother, he said. The only reason they took her alive is because they need to know what else she knows, what other evidence exists. Once they're satisfied, they've eliminated all the threats. He couldn't finish the sentence with Lily listening, but Lisa understood. We'll find her, Marcus. We have every law enforcement agency in California looking for them. But even as she said it, Marcus could see the doubt in her eyes. Victoria and her family had stayed ahead of law enforcement for years, operating across multiple states, always one step ahead of the investigations. As if reading his thoughts, Lily tugged on his sleeve. Uncle Marcus, I know where they took Grandma. Both adults stared at her. How could you possibly know that? Lisa asked gently. Because when Victoria used to talk to her mum on the phone, she mentioned a cabin they owned in Lake Tahoe. She said it was where they went to clean up loose ends. I remember because I thought it was a weird way to talk. About housework, Lisa was already pulling up maps on her tablet. Lake Tahoe is a big area. Do you remember anything else about this cabin? Lily closed her eyes, concentrating the way children do when they're trying to remember something important. She said it was near a place called Emerald Bay, and that you could see the lake from the upstairs windows. Oh, and there was something about a dock where they kept a boat. Marcus felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. If Lily was right, they might actually be able to find Rose before it was too late. But Lake Tahoe was a 3-hour drive from San Francisco, and Victoria's team had a significant head start. We need to go now, Marcus said, starting to get up from the ambulance. You're not going anywhere, Lisa said firmly. You're still recovering from whatever they drugged you with, and this is a job for law enforcement professionals. That's my mother they have. And this is my case. Lisa shot back. Marcus, I understand you want to help, but the best thing you can do right now is stay here with Lily and let us do our job. But Lily had other ideas. What if we're wrong, she said quietly. What if they're not at the cabin? What if Victoria was lying when she talked about it, in case someone was listening? Lisa knelt down to Lily's level. Do you think she was lying? Maybe. Victoria lied about everything else. But, Lily's voice got even quieter. I think I know a way to find out for sure. She pulled Marcus's phone out of her pocket when had she taken it, and showed them an app he'd never seen before. When Victoria lived with us, I put a tracking app on her phone. I was scared she might hurt Grandma when I wasn't around, so I wanted to know where she was all the time. Marcus stared at his niece in amazement. You put a tracking app on Victoria's phone? How? It's not hard. Kids at school do it all the time to their parents. You just need their phone for like 2 minutes when they're not looking. Lisa was already reaching for the phone. Show me. Lily opened the app, and a map appeared on the screen with a blinking red dot, moving north on Highway 80, exactly the route you'd take to get to Lake Tahoe. They're heading for the cabin, Lisa breathed. How did an 8-year-old outsmart an entire criminal organization? Because adults always underestimate kids, Lily said matter-of-factly. Victoria thought I was just a scared little girl who didn't understand what was happening. She never realized I was watching everything and figuring out how to protect my family. Marcus pulled Lily into a hug, overwhelmed by pride and fear in equal measure. You might have just saved Grandma's life. But as Lisa coordinated with law enforcement agencies in Nevada and California, as helicopters were dispatched and SWAT teams mobilized, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Victoria was still one step ahead of them. She'd planned for everything else. Why wouldn't she have planned for the possibility that someone might track her phone? His fears were confirmed 20 minutes later when the red dot on Lily's tracking app suddenly stopped moving and then disappeared entirely. They found the tracker, Lisa said grimly. We lost them just outside Sacramento. But Marcus was studying the map, thinking like the strategic businesswoman he'd learned to be over years of high-stakes negotiations. No, he said slowly. We didn't lose them, we found them. What do you mean? Marcus pointed to where the tracking signal had disappeared. Look at this location. It's not random. They stopped at a truck stop with multiple exit routes: Highway 50 toward Tahoe, Interstate 5 toward Oregon, or Highway 99 back toward the Bay Area. If Victoria was really trying to escape, she would have disabled the tracker before she left San Francisco. Lisa was beginning to understand. You think she wanted us to track her this far? I think she's been playing a deeper game than we realized. The cabin at Lake Tahoe, the phone tracking, even getting caught on surveillance cameras during the kidnapping, it's all too convenient. Then where are they really going? Marcus closed his eyes, trying to think like a predator who'd been hunting wealthy families for years. Where would someone like Victoria take a hostage if they wanted to buy time, extract information, and still have multiple escape routes? Then it hit him. The Hayes family boat, he said. Earlier, Patricia mentioned they had a yacht docked somewhere. If they're really planning to disappear after this, they'd want to be near water, near an escape route that doesn't involve airports or border checkpoints. Lily was nodding. I heard Victoria talking about a boat too. She said something about the marina and how it was perfect for deep water. Lisa was already on her radio again, requesting Coast Guard assistance and marina searches up and down the California coast. But Marcus had a terrible feeling they were still missing something important. Victoria Hayes had spent years planning the perfect crime. She wasn't going to let a tracking app and a few overheard phone conversations derail everything now. Which meant she had one final surprise waiting for them. And with Rose's life hanging in the balance, Marcus knew they were running out of time to figure out what it was. The Coast Guard helicopter cut through the morning fog over San Francisco Bay, its rotors beating a steady rhythm that matched Marcus's racing heart. 12 hours had passed since Victoria's team had taken Rose, and they'd finally traced the Hayes family boat to a secluded cove near Lily pressed her face against the helicopter window, her small hands gripping the safety harness. Despite Detective Park's protests, Marcus had insisted his niece come with them. After everything she'd endured, after all the ways the adults had failed to protect her, Lily had earned the right to see this through to the end. There, Lily pointed through the fog. That white boat with the blue stripe, that's the one Victoria showed me pictures of. Below them, the 50-foot yacht Easy Money sat anchored in the protected waters of the cove. Smoke was rising from its cabin, and Marcus could see figures moving on the deck. Coast Guard cutter Steadfast is approaching from the south, the helicopter pilot announced. SWAT team is ready for deployment. But Marcus was watching the boat through binoculars, and what he saw made his blood freeze. On the yacht's rear deck, tied to a chair, was his mother. Even from this distance, he could see that she was conscious but barely moving. And standing beside her, no longer bothering with disguises or voice modulators, was Victoria Hayes. She was holding something in her hand, something that glinted silver in the morning sunlight. A syringe. "She's going to kill her," Marcus said into his headset. "We need to move now." "Mr. Chen, please remain calm," came the voice of Commander Sarah Rodriguez from the Coast Guard cutter. "We have snipers in position and negotiators standing by." But through the helicopter's high-powered camera feed, they could all see Victoria raising the syringe toward Rose's arm. Whatever was in that needle, Marcus knew it wasn't medicine. That's when Lily grabbed the helicopter's radio microphone. Victoria, her voice crackled through the communications system, broadcasting to every law enforcement unit in the area. "I know you can hear me." The figure on the boat deck froze, looking up toward the helicopter. "If you hurt my grandma, everyone will know what you really are. I recorded everything you said on the phone. I have videos of you putting poison in her food. And I know about the other old people you killed." Victoria's response came through the boat's radio system, her voice filled with venom. "You stupid little brat. Do you think anyone cares what a child has to say? Your uncle might have saved you this time, but there are other ways to deal with inconvenient witnesses." Actually, Detective Park's voice joined the radio frequency. "Quite a few people care what this child has to say, including the FBI agents who are currently arresting your mother, Patricia, at her hotel in Sacramento, and the federal prosecutors who are charging your entire family with racketeering under the RICO Act." The silence from the boat stretched for several seconds. Then Victoria's voice came back, but now it was different, desperate, unhinged. "It doesn't matter. The old woman dies today, and without her testimony, you can't prove anything." That's when Rose Chen, 72 years old, and weakened by months of systematic poisoning, did something that reminded everyone why she'd been able to raise 2 successful sons and build a fortune from nothing. She bit down hard on Victoria's wrist as the younger woman tried to inject her. Victoria screamed and dropped the syringe, which skidded across the deck and fell into the bay. In her pain and rage, she released the ropes, binding Rose to the chair. Rose didn't hesitate. Despite her weakness, despite the drugs still in her system, she threw herself over the side of the boat and into the cold waters of San Francisco Bay. "Grandma!" Lily screamed from the helicopter. Marcus was already moving, grabbing the rescue harness and clipping himself in. "Get me down there now." "Sir, you're not trained for water rescue. That's my mother." But the Coast Guard swimmers were already in the water, speeding toward Rose's struggling form. Marcus watched through the helicopter's camera as they reached her just as she was going under for the second time. On the boat, Victoria was screaming orders at her remaining team members, but the Coast Guard cutter had closed in from both sides. SWAT team members rappelled down from another helicopter, surrounding the yacht in a matter of seconds. The final confrontation lasted less than 5 minutes. Victoria and her team were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in open water with nowhere to run. As Marcus watched his mother being pulled from the bay and loaded onto the Coast Guard medical team's boat. As Victoria was handcuffed and led away screaming threats and promises of revenge, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: complete relief. It was over. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood in the renovated sunroom of his mother's house, watching Lily teach Rose how to use the new tablet he'd bought her. The afternoon sun streamed through windows that had been replaced with bulletproof glass, a precaution that might seem excessive, but Marcus was taking no chances with his family's safety ever again. "Look, Grandma, if you swipe left, you can see all the photos Uncle Marcus took of our trip to Disneyland." Rose's color had returned, along with her sharp wit and gentle smile. The doctors said her recovery was remarkable for someone her age, but Marcus knew the secret. Rose Chen was too stubborn to let a would-be murderer win. "And if I swipe right, that's the puzzle game one downloaded for you. It's supposed to help keep your brain sharp." "As if my brain needs any help," Rose laughed. "I outwitted a professional criminal organization, didn't I?" Detective Park had become a regular visitor to the house, partly for ongoing casework, but mostly because she'd grown genuinely fond of the family that had fought so hard for each other. "The final sentencing is next week," she told Marcus as they sat on the back patio while Lily and Rose played inside. "Victoria gets life without parole for the murder conspiracy charges. Patricia gets 25 to life for racketeering. The federal case against their organization has led to arrests in 6 states. And David's case, the recording from his watch was even more damning than we hoped. Victoria confessed to everything: the planned poisoning of your mother, the inheritance fraud scheme, even details about the other elderly victims across the country. She thought she was gloating to a dying man, so she held nothing back. Lisa paused, watching Lily through the window as the little girl patiently showed Rose how to video chat with the iPad. You know, in 20 years of law enforcement, I've never seen anything like what that little girl did. 8 years old, and she single-handedly exposed a criminal conspiracy that had been operating for over a decade. Marcus nodded, pride swelling in his chest. She saved us all. She saved more than just your family. The evidence she gathered has led to prosecutions in Oregon, Washington, and Nevada. Families who thought their relatives died of natural causes are finally getting answers. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself thinking about the future differently than he had before this nightmare began. His tech company was successful, but success felt hollow when the people he loved were in danger. He'd already made arrangements to work remotely most days, to be present in Lily and Rose's daily lives in a way he'd never been before. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, a nightly tradition Marcus had instituted to make sure they spent time together as a family. Lily looked up from her homework. "Uncle Marcus, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think Daddy would be proud of us?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. David had been the gentle one, the brother who always saw the best in people, who had trusted Victoria even when his instincts told him something was wrong. "I think your daddy would be amazed by how brave and smart you were, and I think he'd be glad that we finally became the family he always wanted us to be." Rose reached across the table and took both their hands. "Your father loved you more than anything in the world, Lily. And he would be proud that you fought for family the way he taught you to." After dinner, they had developed a ritual. Marcus would play guitar while Rose sang old songs and Lily danced around the living room. Tonight, Lily requested "Here Comes the Sun" by the Beatles. Appropriate, Marcus thought, given how much darkness they'd all emerged from. As Lily spun around the room, laughing and free in a way she'd never been able to be with Victoria in the house, Marcus caught his mother's eye. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. Rose smiled, her eyes bright and clear for the first time in months. "Only one. I regret that we wasted so much time being afraid of Victoria when we should have been trusting each other." Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed and Rose was settled in her room with her new medical alert system and round-the-clock nursing care, Marcus sat in his brother's old study, reading through David's journals. On the last entry, dated 2 days before David's death, his brother had written, "If something happens to me, I hope Marcus will understand that I tried to protect them. I hope Lily grows up knowing how much her father loved her. And I hope someone stops Victoria before she hurts anyone else. But most of all, I hope our family finds its way back to each other." Marcus closed the journal, tears streaming down his face. They had found their way back to each other, but the cost had been almost too high. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, his heart raced, thinking it might be another threat from Victoria's allies. But when he opened it, he smiled. It was from Janet Williams. The CPS worker who had helped with Lily's custody case saw the news about the final sentencing. "That little girl of yours is going to change the world someday. Take care of each other." Marcus typed back, "We will. Thank you for believing in us." As he turned off the lights and headed upstairs, Marcus paused outside Lily's bedroom door. Inside, he could hear her talking quietly to someone. ... And then Uncle Marcus came to save us, just like I knew he would. And now we're safe, and Victoria can never hurt anyone ever again. Daddy, I miss you, but I think you'd like how our family turned out. We take care of each other now, just like you always wanted." Marcus smiled and continued to his own room. Lily was talking to her father's picture, a nightly ritual she'd started after they'd moved back into the house. 3 months later, on a sunny Saturday morning in spring, Marcus stood in the courthouse steps of downtown San Francisco, holding Lily's hand while photographers captured the moment. The adoption papers were final. Lily was officially his daughter now, not just his niece. "How does it feel to be a dad?" one reporter asked. Marcus looked down at Lily, who was wearing the purple dress Rose had bought her for the occasion. "It feels like something I should have done years ago." "And Lily, how does it feel to have a new dad?" Lily stepped forward to the microphone with the confidence that came from knowing she was loved and protected. "He's not new, he's always been my family. We just made it official." As they drove home that afternoon, past the harbor where Victoria's yacht had been, impounded as evidence, past the hospital where Rose had fought for her life, past all the places where their family had almost been destroyed, Marcus realized something important. They hadn't just survived Victoria's attempt to destroy them. They'd become stronger because of it. Lily was in therapy now, working through the trauma of what she'd experienced, but she was also thriving. Her grades had improved, she'd made friends at her new school, and she was learning advanced piano pieces that amazed her teacher. Rose had fully recovered and was now volunteering with elder abuse prevention programs, sharing her story to help other families recognize the warning signs of predatory caregivers. And Marcus had restructured his entire company to allow him to work from home most days, to be present for school plays and piano recitals and ordinary Tuesday dinners that meant more to him than any business deal ever could. The Hayes family was locked away for life, their criminal organization dismantled, their victims finally receiving justice. But the best revenge against Victoria's attempt to destroy their family was the family they'd built in response, stronger, closer, and more protective of each other than they'd ever been before. As they pulled into their driveway, Lily looked up at Marcus with the kind of serious expression that meant she had something important to say. Dad, she'd started calling him that after the adoption, and it still made his heart skip a beat every time. "Yes, sweetheart. If someone ever tries to hurt our family again, they're going to have to get through all three of us this time." Marcus smiled, thinking of his fierce 8-year-old daughter, his indomitable mother, and the promise he'd made to his brother's memory. "That's right, we protect each other." And as they walked up the front steps of their home, their real home, filled with love and laughter, and the absolute certainty that they would never let anyone hurt each other again, Marcus knew that David's final wish had come true. Their family had found its way back to each other.